Lula, ladrão, seu lugar é na prisão.
Want to see what MAGAism looks like abroad? Look no further than the stands of a Formula One race. Which carried into the streets of Brazil, where Jair Bolsonaro, the Trump of the country, lost the election. Thus, his supporters, much like the former American president's supporters, showed their true colors, performing what appeared to be a Nazi salute in Jair's honor. Shameless is one way to put it. Brainwashed could be another. What took place in Sao Paulo, where many argue there is no place for politics in sports, shows yet another example of just how hypocritical the stance is. To be honest, what's shocked me the most is the lack of media coverage, because the original uploaders have tagged all the major networks, including Western media, and alas, 0 articles from said major networks. The Pledge Times wrote, videos shared on social media show the audience screaming, "Squid thief, your place is in prison." The demonstrators began after the performance of the national anthem, which was accompanied by the symphony orchestra. Inside the track, the race was won by British driver George Russell from Mercedes, followed by his teammate Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez from Red Bull. The 2022 Formula One season title has already been secured by Red Bull's Max Verstappen. Essentially, Bolsonaro supporters are really ticked.
Now to a stunning political comeback in Brazil. Leftist Lula da Silva defeated his bitter rival, far-right President Jair Bolsonaro, to secure his return as the country's leader. Da Silva was Brazil's president from 2003 to 2010. He is credited with building an extensive social welfare program and helped lift tens of millions into the middle class.
But I think the best way of describing it is the way you put in your own news feed there. Brazil holds its breath, a global sigh of relief.
Much like Donald Trump, Jair Bolsonaro will not concede the election even when handed defeat, which was predictable.
There's widespread fear in Brazil that Bolsonaro could attempt to stage a coup if he loses the election. Earlier in the campaign, Bolsonaro said, quote, "Only God will remove me from power. The army is on our side. It's an army that doesn't accept corruption, doesn't accept fraud."
Right before his election, when calling into a rally, Bolsonaro promised the rule of law would become rule by law, unleashed on his political opponents.
Não tem preço.
These red outcasts will be banished from our homeland.
He has played up this charade of the election being stolen, much like we have seen, even sadly up until this point, in the United States of America. And depressingly, his supporters buy all of it.
É fraude! Se ele ganhar, é fraude! E nós não vamos aceitar! E não vai ter exército pra nos segurar! Aqui não vai virar Venezuela, não! Você entendeu?
Bolsonaro, in a very short speech, didn't concede the election or recognize Lula's victory. Instead, he said he would follow the Constitution. He thanked his voters and addressed protests and pro-Bolsonaro trucker roadblocks that have sprung up across Brazil. He described demonstrations as the product of indignation and feelings of injustice in the electoral process. To be very clear, he has followed the Trump playbook. In the lead up to the 2022 elections, he amplified and intensified those claims, especially as Lula led in the polls and Bolsonaro faced political backlash for his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economy. Specifically, Bolsonaro lied about the security of the country's electronic voting system, which, in use since 2002, was created to reduce fraud and corruption and to manage the logistics of a complex voting system. "I'll hand over the presidential sash to whoever wins the election cleanly," the far-right Bolsonaro said said in July 2021, not with wire fraud. Bolsonaro lost the election, but many of his political allies won, and Lula will rule over a divided government. Lula won with a coalition that included his traditional base of support, but his coalition spanned from the far left to the center right, including many who voted against Bolsonaro rather than for Lula. That may redefine the legacy of Lula, a leftist hero who went from prison back to the presidency and who, as experts said, may now govern more from the center, framing himself as a transitional leader.